Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Porter County Perspective, WDSO's long-standing interview segment featuring the people, places, and organizations of Northwest Indiana, whose mission it is to make our area a better place to live. I'm your host, WDSO's Braden Kennelly, and this week I'm excited to have Annette Hansen of the Izaak Walton League of Porter County as my guest. It's great to have you in. I'm looking forward to learning more about your organization. First, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to your role in the Izaak Walton League.
All right, so I started with the Izaak Walton League of America, Porter County chapter, through my involvement with 4-H. I'm a 4-H leader. The Discovery Trackers 4-H Club of Porter County Purdue Extension started in 2018 when we opened Discovery Charter School. I also teach art there. And some of the members of the Porter County chapter reached out to us because we were, a group of volunteers whose families could come and help pull invasive species. So we did that. We pulled a lot around Hawthorne Park. It was called, a program right then, it was called Window to the Wetlands. And the idea was that if you were standing in the park, we would remove those invasive species so that you could actually see there's a wetland down there between the park and the river. A lot of people who lived there for 20 years didn't even know there was a wetland in there. There's also a bog and there's a bog in there and all kinds of wonderful natural wetland stuff.
All right. Who was Izaak Walton, and why do you feel the league was named after him?
Okay, so Izaak Walton was around in the early 1600s, and he wrote a work called The Complete Angler. The Complete Angler was something that had never been thought of before. The idea was that if you were going to fish and hunt, you wanted to preserve the land and the water and the air so that all this, the deer, the turkey, whatever you were hunting or fishing would have natural preserve. So back in the 1600s when we weren't dumping oil or making mistakes like we do now as humans, he was that far thinking that he was writing a book about how other anglers and fishermen and hunters could protect the native lands. So when they started the Izaak Walton League nationally, it started in Chicago in 1922, they thought, oh, we need a name for this thing. What are we going to call it? Hey, somebody came up with the idea to name it after Izaak Walton, and the rest is history.
Can you tell us what the Izaak Walton League's mission is, and then also the member pledge?
Okay, so the Izaak Walton's mission is to defend soil, air, woods, waters, and wildlife. We started out kind of, 100 years ago as a hunting and fishing group, but like Izaak Walton, the conservation became more and more prominent because more and more problems were happening in the world, especially in America. So our mission is to defend those things, and then our pledge is to strive for the purity of water, the clarity of air, and the wise stewardship of the land and its resources, to know the beauty and understanding of nature and the value of wildlife, woodlands, and open spaces. To the preservation of this heritage and to mankind's sharing in it, I pledge myself as a member of the Izaak Walton League of America. They just switched it from man sharing in it to mankind's to be more inclusive because we have a ton of lady members as well. Yeah, we're strong in there now.
How do members strive to uphold the league's mission and commit to the pledge?
Okay, so we're all a bunch of volunteers. And when we see something is wrong, we try to advocate it with local government. We get down in the river and test water. We go out and clean up garbage. I mean, anywhere we see as chapters where we can do something to better the environment, we try to get in there to do that. And it's just about pulling those volunteers together and making it happen.
Is the Izaak Walton League a national organization? And if so, how many chapters/members exist across the country?
So we are a national organization. And right now there are 200 chapters across America. The Midwest and the Eastern Coast really have the most chapters, but there are plenty of them across America. And we're at about 40,000 members right now, men and women, like I said. Locally, we started in 1958. So the Porter County chapter was founded in 1958 by Charlotte and Herb Reed. Now, Charlotte and Herb Reed are names They're both passed now, but these are people that also started Save the Dunes, and they opened the chapter of the Izaak Walton in hopes that they would get that national backing while they were trying to save our dunes right here in Northwest Indiana. So the two of them got us started, and they started with meeting in the living room and trying to get this grassroots organization going. And it was all about saving the dunes, and we've branched out since then.
Besides yourself, who are some of the other members of your organization that serve locally or nationally that you think deserve a shout out?
Oh my goodness, our board is full of experts and people who've been working at this conservation thing here in Northwest Indiana for decades. Jim Sweeney is our vice president right now. He served as our president for quite a long time. He is one that can sit behind the desk and advocate, send out blast emails to get people like you or families to express how they feel about certain issues to their local government and to their representatives. He's been working at that for his whole life almost. Gary Brown is our president. You'll find Gary at the local, at the local council meetings. He always comes in to step up and shout out that, hey, what you guys are doing needs some extra conservation protection. If you're going to dig a ditch, let's make sure it's done the right way, or let's not goof up the water table or create more pollution than is there. Liz McCluskey, she works with the Fish and Wildlife Association as her job. She's about to retire, good for her. Liz is our treasurer, and again, she has done a ton with native plantings and all of these things that these people do just keep adding on to the pile of conservation. Walt Breidinger, he has tried and true member. He's been coming for years. He also works with the Valparaiso chain of lakes. So he's a really big water protection guy, especially in Valparaiso. And then Bonnie and Susan Swanner are the last two names that I'll mention. You hear Susan on WDSO with the Westchester Museum, History Museum, and then her mother is Bonnie. And the two of them are a force to be reckoned with. They not only do the conservation on their own properties, but work to keep water clean, and they've just expanded. They started the Family Nature Night program, which is something that we do at local elementary schools. We bring in partners locally who are doing the same things we're doing. The Save the Dunes Learning Center, Shirley Hines, Indiana Humane Wildlife, all of these people who are working behind the scenes to keep America clean, and we have them set up tables, and then young children can come in with their families after school hours and visit with them and learn not only what they're doing, but what families can do to make, their own environments better and better.
Can you tell us any of the prominent historical figures who are a member of the organization?
Okay, so Braden, I went and I looked up the 54 founders. And there were 54 men that came together back in 1922 in Chicago. And I'm going to guess that you have never heard of any of these names, nor your listeners. But these are people, like I said, they're good old volunteers who came together to cause effect and make change. I can't think of anybody besides myself who's so famous. Some of the league's accomplishments.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was about to be transitioning. Oh. Tell us about the league's accomplishments.
Okay, I'll let you know about that. So in the 1950s, well, go backwards. Right around the 1940s, we had the Dust Bowl, okay? And we could see then that agriculture wasn't being preserved in a way that was healthy for long-term environmental goals. Mm-hmm. And the league came up with ideas about how agriculture could be treated differently, how erosion could be slowed down or stopped. Then we started noticing water pollution in the 50s. A lot of industrial stuff was happening, and they would just dump any old runoff water into our water table. So that is when we started coming up with ideas for the Clean Water Act, and that was passed in 1972. There are, all the fish and wildlife refuges we've had the pleasure of working on. The Upper Mississippi River, there are elk preserves, Jackson Hole National Monument. We supported the Grand Teton National Park. So anywhere we can see where, as a national league, not just Porter County, but as a national league, anywhere we can see that we better preserve this space because this species or this particular plant is going to go extinct if we don't hold on to this land and not let it get built or torn or, ripped apart. So those are kind of the things that we still work on. And today, we're looking forward to 100 years. We've just completed 100 years in 2022. So we're looking forward, and this Saving Outdoor America, we're looking at the next 100 years. So we see things like habitat loss. Around here, it's draining the wetlands or filling and building. That's terrible. That's the worst thing you could do. It's no longer holding and sequestering carbon. It's not keeping water out of the storm drains. There are just so many pieces of the puzzle. You take away a wetland, you not only take away habitat from the wildlife, but you're making your community harder to live in. Okay? So we're trying to tackle all kinds of things like stop pouring chemicals in the water, keep industry from industry and even in your own backyard from dumping chemicals. There are plenty of things that we put on our plants that we think are going to kill insects or make our tomatoes grow better that really in the long run are forever chemicals, and they're not good for us. It goes into the water table, you fish, you eat the fish, you put it into your body. There's a lot. There's a lot. Backyard birds and insects. We're looking at an insect apocalypse right now. Not a lot of people talk about it, but if you lose insects, you lose birds. You lose birds, you lose the animals that eat the birds. It's just you get rid of all your pollinators. All of a sudden, you don't have a food supply. There is a lot. It's a trickle-down effect that humanity will not survive if we don't make these big changes. And these are the kinds of things that the league is looking at for the next 100 years in our future. Regenerative agriculture is a huge thing. You've heard of cover crops, where you take care, instead of just tilling up the soil and planting the next seed, you're trying to keep so weeds aren't growing. I get it, you're spraying, but what's happening is that topsoil is running out of nutrients, and it's just not gonna give us the food that we need to survive in the way we're supposed to survive. Yeah, there's a lot. Protecting the wetlands here in Northwest Indiana is our biggest thing. Porter County chapter's very worried about that. And it's all led by volunteers, and that's what we have to count on moving forward.
You're mentioning some of those lawns. How would people switching over to natural gardens and stuff, how would that help?
Okay, so anybody out there who wants to look up a super genius, Dr. Ptolemy, he is a guy who has been I had the pleasure of hearing him talk quite a few times now. When you're switching over, the things you want to do, your oak tree is your number one best friend in your backyard. You want to get rid of any invasive species. Plenty of species can be called exotic at your landscaping store, but what you're asking, when you want to ask for is, give me a native tree instead of something that just looks decorative and ornamental, right? You want to take out anything like ornamental bittersweet, multiflora rose. You want to get rid of, again, these pear trees. They're about to bloom. These big white trees. They smell good. They look pretty, but it's invasive. It's covering areas where plants should be growing in the understory on the ground. So Dr. Ptolemy says, oak trees, best thing you got going, because they make the most species of caterpillars, and caterpillars feed more animals and wildlife in our environment than anything else. So that's your number one tree. Now, when caterpillars don't get eaten by mama bird or baby bird, what they do is they fall from the trees to the ground. And when they fall, if they're hitting a hard surface like just a lawn, they're not going to make it, especially when it's so compacted, that soil, that they can't drill through. And they're usually, they're either going to pupate in the leaf litter, or they're going to drill into the soil a little bit and pupate down there. So your best bet when you're designing your garden or your yard that's good for wildlife is that you want to put things under your oak trees or trees that is soft. So you put things under there that are shade tolerant, right? native plants. And when the insect falls from the branches down below, it's a soft landing. So that's really what you want. And you're not going to be tempted to rake up the leaves because there's plants down there. They're doing their thing. So soft landing under oak trees is the best way to go. The other thing that Porter County Chapter and National Wildlife Federation has been really a big push here in Northwest Indiana is to take a section of your lawn and turn it into a wild space. I call it backyard 10 by 10. And you're just carving out a 10-foot by 10-foot piece of lawn, and you're putting in native seeds. And if anybody out there wants help, tips, seeds, you call me. nwiconservation.org and find out all the details of how to get a hold of me and get that started. We have tons of programs like that.
Well, going back on track from plants back to the organization.
Okay.
The Izaak Walton League's website says that a big part of the success of the league is thanks to community-based conservation and volunteer science. Could you expand on that?
Absolutely. So what we're talking about there is citizen science, pretty much. So, for example, the Save Our Streams, and we may talk about that in a minute too, but Save Our Streams is a scientific protocol put together by the league so that folks like you and me can go out to our local stream, waterway, and you collect water that you can have chemical testing done to. And you can do that right at the edge of the stream. We can make that happen if people are interested in helping with that. You're testing for salt in the wintertime because of so much road salt. You're testing for nitrates. You're testing for about 5 or 6 different things that will lead you to find out whether that water body is potentially polluted or is clean, okay? You're also looking at macroinvertebrates. And macroinvertebrates are the little insects. Did you know that a dragonfly lives underwater for the first 2 years of its life?
I did not.
Oh, that's a macroinvertebrate, a little wiggly creature. And by getting a sample and putting them in a tray and choosing and counting, you can tell if you have a polluted stream. Even if you don't have a chemical test, you can tell if you have a polluted stream or not by which macroinvertebrates are visible. So some are really tolerant to pollution and others are not. So if you see the ones that are not tolerant to pollution, you know you've got a clean water system. So I digress. Citizen science are things like that you can do in your own backyard. I've got citizen science programs for bats. We monitor bats on our properties. We have 5 properties here in Northwest Indiana that we hold exclusively just for conservation and outdoor recreation, research, etc. I have a bluebird trail. People like you can get involved. I have a NIPSCO grant to be able to give families bluebird houses that they can put in their backyards, provided they're in the right space for bluebirds. And then they monitor, they count the eggs, they count the babies, they upload their data to the Cornell University Nest Watch program. I've got a project right inside there. We count monarchs, we collect seeds, milkweed seeds and goldenrod seeds, so we can pass them around to the county so people can do backyard 10 by 10s or they can do roadside seeding. We're about to start, and this is so cool, and we're just learning. Bobwhite quail reintroduction is a project that we're working on. And again, we want to get people learning, excited. This is all done with volunteers about reintroducing a ground bird that pretty much is, we don't see. Do you ever see a quail? So that tells us everything, right? You grew up in this area, you've never seen a quail. That tells us we need that. You should see quail every day or often. So citizen science is where you can monitor something, count something, write it down, and report back to whatever hub is collecting that information. I'm not collecting that information and holding it just for Porter County Chapter. I'm sharing it with these global hubs that allow scientists from around the world to look at our data. Yeah, it's pretty cool. What else can I tell you? What's my next question?
Save Our Streams program.
Okay, so I touched on that a little bit. Save Our Streams. If you go to iwla.org, you can sign up for packages that will send you the little test strips that you need. Maybe you have a little creek in your backyard or a stream, and you want to be the boss of watching that all the time. You're the watchdog. So you get a little test vial. You know, they teach you how to do it in the package. You test it for salt. If it's high in salt, you're going to write it down. Then you're going to upload to the Save Our Streams hub and tell them what you saw. Same thing for nitrates. That's the new push. Yeah, that's a good program. That protocol is super scientific. It's easy to follow. I give people opportunities to come out and do that with me all the time. I get middle school kids in the water wearing the big old boots and the whole thing so they can get down there and find the insects. Yeah, that's a cool program. That's a big one. That's across the whole country.
Do you want to repeat that website real quick, just in case they didn't get that?
Sure. The national organization, you can reach them at iwla.org.
All right. And could you tell us what the focus of the Izaak Walton League's Second Century Action Plan will be and how it will be implemented?
Okay, so I kind of touched on that a little bit already. These next 100 years, we just celebrated 100 years. These next 100 years, we'll be trying to save wetlands. We're trying to tackle things like cancer-causing chemicals. We're really active in the water. So anytime we have an opportunity to see change for the better in water systems, that's where we're going. We want to see bird and insect species come back up in their numbers. We're down 50% from when I was a kid in bird species alone. Insects are dropping at an incredibly fast rate also. We're spraying them. We don't like mosquitoes, we spray them. You know, what we should do is bring in bats and make life easier for bats so that insects will be eaten up naturally, right? There's so many different ways
that
you
might
can handle
be a
these.
hard sell in the department stores. Get yourself a bat.
Yeah, no, what we want to do though is just, so we plant native plants that will attract moths, that attracts bats, and then while the bats are eating the moths, they're also eating the mosquitoes. It's a beautiful circle. Yeah. Again, with the cover crops and regenerative agriculture, we want to see we're safeguarding water supplies. You know, there are plenty of communities right now who are finding that their wells are running shallow and you can't really go too much deeper than what they already are. So they are reaching out to communities, I'm not going to name names, but they're reaching out to communities 20, 50 miles away to tap river sources that aren't polluted like the ones closer to the troubled community. That's a long pipeline to bring water when you've kind of messed up your own water, you know? So we have to really, everybody just needs to kind of wake up and get involved. Yeah.
Speaking of waking up and getting involved, in what ways can the average person connect with the league and help conserve and clean up their community?
So come talk to me. I've got plenty of things going on all the time. I can teach you how to pull invasive weeds, how to identify them. We've got a weed wrangle coming up on April the 28th, and that gets you out to the Frame Family Little Calumet Conservation Area. That's on County Line Road at Michigan City. Again, look at my website, which is nwiconservation.org, and we always have posts up there about the things that are happening, the different events. I'm working with the First Presbyterian Church of Valparaiso. We're doing a little naturalist program so that their community, and we're opening it to any people from the community to come and check that out. The first one is going to be about bluebirds and cavity nesters. So a cavity nester is a native bird that lives in a birdhouse. It looks for a cavity to live in. We want to invite people again to get a birdhouse, put it in their yard, check it out, keep track of it, monitor, etc. Anytime you want to get involved in the community, you can also reach out to lots of agencies here in Northwest Indiana. IDEM, which is the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. There's the Hoosier Environmental Council, Porter County Recycling. Depends what your passion is, you know. Are you passionate about wildlife? Well, then I probably would hook you up with Humane Indiana Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. They've always got ideas for ways that you can help save an animal or make your environment better for that particular animal or species, how you can just do better across the board. If you're somebody who's really passionate about water quality or about air quality, you know, we have the worst air quality of America right here in Indiana.
Really? I didn't know that.
The worst. We got a lot of asthma. We got a lot of breathing problems. It's because of some of the industry around us. Yeah. So it depends what you're passionate about. Go towards that agency or that group that can steer you in the right direction on what you can accomplish by yourself. Also, constantly reach out to your representatives, your congressmen, your senators, your local legislators, your local city councils. All these people, your vote matters to them, and your opinion should matter as well. You tell them, I don't want to see any more weed spray used in this town. Well, you get an ordinance made that says no more weed spray, and that could solve the problem. But you got to say something to get what you need.
Can you tell us about conservation and landscaping and how it benefits the environment?
So I think we touched on that. We talked about oak trees and soft landings. Yeah, that's the way to go. You want to take out, if you can get rid of as much lawn as you could. Dr. Ptolemy talks about would be great to have a national movement for get rid of the lawns. You know why lawn is a thing? It's because when landowners from Europe decided, we have so much money that we don't need to farm our land, let's just cut it and make it look beautiful like a lawn. And then pretty soon it was a prestige thing where, I have enough money, I don't need to grow my own food on my property, so I'm just going to make a lawn. Next thing you know, everybody wants lawn. It looks clean, pretty, green, but it negates all those insects that could be living there, and lots of creatures. A simple thing like native bees. When they first emerge, they need dandelions, okay? Because that's their food, their first food source. They're getting nectar and pollen from a dandelion. If you pull or kill all the dandelions in your yard, can't find one, those insects go hungry. They don't make it. So there's a lot of little things you can do just at home that can make a big change.
I think they would need police action to get my dad to get rid of his lawn. Imagine it'd be difficult.
But if you could maybe, let's just say, people like that could be convinced to just do a fun little 10 by 10 experiment.
It does have a huge garden behind it. So
okay, that's cool. Yeah, but a little 10 by 10 or even a little strip along the fence or something, he might be happy because then it doesn't have to mow up against the fence now.
Oh, like he's mowing it. That's my job.
Oh, well, see? Fight back, Braden.
Can you touch on how invasive species harm our environment and how to prevent and control them in our area? And are there any that you think we should specifically look out for?
Okay, yes, there are. Bittersweet is taking over the forest. Ornamental bittersweet is a vine, and you'll see it. It grows up trees and chokes them out. So they're taking away the space that native plants would take up. They're super aggressive. So you just get one plant, it can make 100 plants in a couple of years, and it takes over the whole forest floor, and then it climbs. So it's taking away the space that the mayapple or the trillium or these plants that are supposed to be there. Because think about it, the insects and the birds that evolved to live in a location, they're used to eating those plants or eating the insects that were on the plants, right? So you take away those plants, those wildlife, those insects, they don't have anything to eat. So you try to take out the invasive so the other native plants have a chance to come back. Now, these things are the dickens. Just awful. You really need to treat them just by cutting them off. It actually spurs them, something like the ornamental bittersweet, it spurs it to grow even faster. Terrible. I wish it just didn't get here in the first place. And you dig it up, that can help, but what you really need to do is spot treat it. And I hate chemicals, but the best thing you can do is get it with a chemical killer. You snip it and you get it just a little bit on that cut part of the vine. You can go ahead and spray the whole darn forest, but again, that's putting more chemical into the system that you don't want. So I personally do not advocate. I'm the girl that goes out and digs and digs and digs until I get the root system and the whole thing. Really hard to get volunteers or people to do that. Something like the garlic mustard that's about to pop up. So if you're interested in doing something in the next month, late April, early May, you're looking for garlic mustard. Only grows about knee high. The leaves are heart-shaped, has little white tiny flowers. If you break it and roll it in your fingers, it smells like garlic, okay? It was brought here by settlers to act like a garlic, okay? But again, it takes over the forest floor. And then other plants that are supposed to be there don't have the habitat. So what you want to do is you want to get out there, preferably after a rain because it makes it super easy. Pull, pull, pull. They come out really easily when it's wet. Get them in a bag. You don't just want to throw them and toss them back because they will literally grow where they lay. So you toss them in a bag, make sure they go into the landfill garbage. Also, there's the multiflora rose. So thorny like a rose. It's really ambitious. Again, it wants to tangle and grow all over the place. So you got to cut it and spot treat it as well, unless you're going to dig it out. Those are your three biggies that I can think of right now. Also, there's a bush, autumn olive. And autumn olive, you see it in the fall. It really is. It's going strong. It can be tall as a 2-story house sometimes, but the leaves are very silvery. Okay, and it gets these little, I don't know, orangish reddish berries. It's a garbage plant, but it looked pretty, you know. And 50 years ago, we thought, oh, look at this bush. It grows fast. I built this new house. I need things to grow quick. I'm going to get this autumn olive and put it in. It takes over. I've got 5 conservation properties here, and we're fighting it all the time. Again, you cut it down, and you got to spot treat it. Don't spray, spot treat.
You give these plants such nice names. Almost makes me feel
bad.
bad.
And some even look pretty, you know. The ornamental bittersweet in the fall, sometimes you can even find that landscaping places will sell it because the pod, the berries, they'll pop open and they're all beautiful, like this gold and red color. They look beautiful in wreaths and arrangements. But you put it in a wreath, and that eventually that pretty berry is going to dry into a seed, and then what? You're going to throw it in the garbage. It's going to travel on its way. It probably drops some seeds in the meantime. You're just perpetuating the species. So the best thing to do is, even though it's pretty, is to get rid of it as much as you can.
Is that why most of these invasive species get brought in? Is it just like...
So the viney ones, I'm told, got started. The multiflora rose, also the bittersweet. They were great for hedgerows. So you would plant them so you could tell the difference between Farmer John's pasture and Farmer Bill's pasture. You know, when you're cutting all the time, it kind of stays controlled. But farms don't stay farms all the time. Eventually it leaks over, and then it just goes mad. Yeah.
And I think you've mentioned this website a few times, but it's probably better to say it. Where can we go to learn about how to spot invasives and safely eliminate them? Okay.
So I'm going to put on my website, it was there for years. I'm going to put it back just because of this interview. There was a research project done for the Indiana Dune State Park, and this gal put together a very comprehensive guide to identifying invasives, and that would be a good thing. I'm going to put that on nwiconservation.org. That's going to help a lot. There are plenty of groups out there. Off the top of my head, of course, I can't think of a one. But I'll put that on there, and that'll lead your listeners to having a great, comprehensive guide to what those things look like, how they act, and controlling them.
What types of people do you feel are most attracted to joining the organization, and where could they go to learn more about joining the Izaak Walton League?
Okay, so here in Northwest Indiana, you've got a few choices. Porter County chapter, when I grew up, you thought of the Izaak Walton as a place to go play bingo. There was a bar for the dads. There's a boat launch, a gun range. Our Porter County chapter holds 5 properties in Northwest Indiana specifically for conservation. So we do not have any of those amenities. Most of the Izaak Walton, in general, members are retired people. So they get their lives done, they're retired, they really care about the environment, they just didn't know what to do when they were younger. Now they got time on their hands, they want to do something. So we see that it's retired people that make up most of our membership. But we have plenty of people also. I'm not retired yet and I'm in there, right? We've got some young people that get involved because their families have been there forever. If you want to join my chapter, again, it's on nwiconservation.org. Also, the iwla.org. If you're out of town, you can find membership. You know, you can put in your zip code and they'll tell you what chapters are available to you. We have chapters here. Oh, there's a Griffith chapter, the Portage chapter. We have plenty that are around that have all those fancy amenities. And Facebook, all of us are all over Facebook too. So if you needed to find anything like that, if you call me, you find me on my website and you call me, I will try to steer you. There's one in Michigan City. They have a fishing pond and a gun range. There's all different things. Our chapter meets once a month on the 3rd Saturday. Right now we're at Hageman Library. I told you we don't have a clubhouse, so we have to meet publicly. And the community is more than welcome to join us anytime. So we're meeting in the Hageman Library meeting room the 3rd Saturday of the month from 1:15 to 3 p.m. And we cover, oh my goodness, so many things that I've already just talked about. When situations come up, oh, such and such a company is dumping, we'd like to send a letter discussing how we oppose that dumping, or can we give them ideas for ways that they can not do that. We discuss so many different topics, all related to all the things that I've been covering today. And of course, all the things that we do as a chapter with our citizen science, with our family nature nights. We get together and present at the local Earth Day. We have representatives always are at with our partner Humane Indiana Wildlife Rehabilitation. So there's always things that people can get involved with. Just look at my website.
Besides that meet you just mentioned, are there any other upcoming public events you think people will be interested in attending?
So they might like the First Presbyterian Church thing. We're going to do bluebirds on May 5th, and then we've got a bat presentation that I'm going to do on June the 9th. That will be at May 5th. It's Sunday at noon. And the First Presbyterian Church of Valparaiso, I'm struggling to find their address, but you can look at FPCVALPO, FPCValpo.org. I'm sure they're going to have it on there as well.
Are there any fundraising goals you have for this year?
Fundraising goals we have all the time. So we're a little chapter, and we run on donations anytime we do fundraisers. I often work with my 4-H club to do a pancake breakfast, to do a soup social, the little things you can do. And then we've got a really fun thing coming up. This is the first time we're trying this. This is for grown-ups. This is the Well-Suited Comedy Improv Group. We're going to have a comedy night at the Moose Lodge, Chesterton, on April the 27th. So the doors open at 6:30, and we'll be there till 9. It's $15 a ticket. Come as you are. Prepare to laugh. It's very interactive. Cash bar. Like I said, this one's for grown-ups. We also do, and this is my favorite one, on June 8th, this will be our 8th annual Gnomes Day Out Fairy Festival. At Hawthorne Park, we do this. We run from 1 to 6 p.m. It's $20 donation per child. If you show up with a child and you're a grown-up, you are free to enter. If you show up and you're a grown-up and you are ready to party like a fairy, I ask you for a $20 donation. But we have vending, and there are about 30 activities that kids can do for the donation price. Lots of make and takes and art, and have tea with the Fairy Queen, and I get lots of volunteers, plenty from this high school alone, that come and dress up with me, and we put on the show. It's a lot of fun. There's a website for that also. Find the link at nwiconservation.org. You will have to count how many times I said that.
If someone had an environmental concern in the Porter County area, who could they reach out to for more information?
So you should reach out to me, and I will try my best to steer you in the right direction. Whether we would handle it just as a chapter, if it's something kind of small. If it's something big, we're going to send you to the proper agency and get you hooked up with the people to talk to. If it's a national problem that you want to get involved in, again, we'll steer you in the right direction. If you want to get on my newsletter, you can always email me, if it's appropriate to say this, at Executive Director, all written out, ExecutiveDirector @gmail. So it's Executive Director, IWLAPCC @gmail. That stands for Izaak Walton League of America, Porter County Chapter. I know it's super long, but I have an e-newsletter that goes out and tells you things that we're working on in our community and things that you can do at home. I once in a while, too, send emails that remind you, such and such a creature is in trouble and we need support nationally. Please write your congressman or your senator. It gives you all the how-tos, even copy-paste what you can say if you believe in the cause. So you get hooked up with us, and we constantly are churning out these great ways for the community to be involved. Whether you're a member or not, you're just a concerned citizen. We want to see you get it right.
All right. Before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to touch on about the Porter County Izaak Walton League that we haven't addressed?
I read that question earlier, and I couldn't think of a thing I would add. These questions were amazing, well put together. I feel good. People feel free to reach out with me to me by email or on the website.
All right. Okay, I guess that's it for this edition of the Porter County Perspective. I'd like to thank my guest, Annette Hansen of the Izaak Walton League of Porter County. Thank you for coming to WDSO. This has been Braden Kennelly signing off.